The weight of a secret can break a family. But what happens when that secret is revealed in the most shocking way imaginable? Story 1. It started with a simple lunch invitation. My brother-in-law, a man we all trusted, a firefighter who had built his life alongside my sister, reached out to my wife with an unexpected request. He wanted to meet her for lunch, alone. "Do you think it's about my sister?" my wife asked, her brows furrowed in curiosity but not concern. Maybe they were having problems and he wanted her advice. Maybe he was planning a surprise for their anniversary. The possibilities were endless, but none prepared us for what was coming. The next afternoon, she sat at a small table in a crowded cafe waiting. When he arrived, she noticed something immediately. He was nervous. It wasn't the usual kind of nervousness you get before delivering bad news. It was different, uneasy, almost desperate. They exchanged pleasantries, made small talk about the kids, work, and family. Then, just as their food arrived, he took a deep breath and the words tumbled out. "I love you." At first she thought she misheard. But then he continued. "It was love at first sight," he said, his voice shaking. "I've loved you since the moment I laid eyes on you. If you were mine, I'd treat you like the queen you are. I'd give you everything you deserve." My wife froze. The cafe, once bustling with conversation, seemed to melt into silence. This was my brother-in-law, my sister's husband, the father of their children, and he was confessing his love to my wife. She tried to stop him, tried to tell him he was making a mistake, but he kept talking, pouring out years of repressed emotions. He claimed he had been holding these feelings in for so long, watching her, admiring her, waiting for the right moment. The moment he believed was now. My wife did the only thing she could. She stood, her chair scraping loudly against the floor, and walked out. She called me immediately, her voice trembling, words tumbling over each other as she tried to explain what had just happened. While she spoke, her phone buzzed with messages from him. First apologies, then desperation, then begging. He hadn't meant to say it. He was just infatuated. He was sorry. He swore it was only my wife. Only her. He begged her not to tell my sister. The anger that boiled inside me was unlike anything I had ever felt. But what came next was worse. At midnight, my phone rang. My sister's voice was strained, shaking, almost broken. "I need to talk to you," she said. My stomach dropped as she explained that her husband had just come to her in tears, spinning a web of lies so intricate, so bold, that I almost couldn't believe it. He told her my wife had tried to seduce him, that she had been the one pursuing him, that he had been struggling with the guilt of turning her down. My world tilted. This man, this coward, was trying to destroy my wife's reputation to save himself. I hung up and immediately called my parents. Then my younger brother. We weren't going to let this man rewrite the truth. Within minutes, we were on our way to my sister's house. The air in the car was thick with unspoken words. My wife sat beside me, pale, shaking, furious. When we arrived, my sister was already outside. Her husband stood beside her, looking small despite his usual towering presence. His eyes darted between us, pleading, searching for an escape. But there was none. My wife didn't hesitate. She handed my sister her phone, letting her read through the texts, listen to the voicemails, see the undeniable proof of his betrayal. With each message, my sister's face hardened. Then she did something none of us expected. She turned to him, her voice eerily calm. "Pack a bag. And go." He tried to argue, but she cut him off. "There's nothing you can say that will make this better. Leave." His shoulders sagged. He looked at me, at my wife, at the woman he had just betrayed so completely. But there was nothing left to say. As he disappeared inside to gather his things, my sister turned to my wife. And then, in a moment that shook me to my core, she hugged her. Not in anger. Not in blame. But in solidarity. Because in the end, the only villain here was him. But one question lingers in my mind, one that keeps me awake at night. Did my sister know deep down that this betrayal was coming? Story 2, The Silent Visitor. It started with a whisper. For the past week, my wife had been waking up at exactly 3:07 a.m., claiming she heard someone whispering her name. At first, I dismissed it as a recurring nightmare. But then, on the 7th night, I heard it too. A hushed voice. Just beyond our comprehension. "Anna, wake up." It was a chilling murmur, barely audible but undeniably real. I turned on the bedside lamp, my pulse hammering in my ears. The room was empty, just the two of us, but the whispering didn't stop. It was coming from inside the walls. That's when I saw it. The outline of a shadow pressed against the wallpaper. It shifted, moving unnaturally, stretching as though something was trying to push through. I grabbed my wife's hand, pulling her out of bed. But before we could move, the shadow stopped. Then, in a voice as cold as ice, it asked, "Why did you bury me here?" But the real question was, who did? Story 3, The Stranger in My Reflection. It started with a blink. I had been brushing my teeth, staring at my tired reflection, when I noticed something strange. My reflection blinked before I did. I froze. Had I imagined it? I shook my head, laughing at myself, but something felt off. My reflection didn't move with me. Its posture was too still. Its smile too wide. Then it spoke. "I've been waiting for you." I stumbled backward, knocking over the soap dish. The mirror didn't shatter. Instead, the surface rippled like water. And my reflection stepped forward. That was the last night I saw myself. Story 4, The Door That Wasn't There Yesterday. My new apartment was perfect. Spacious, cheap, in a great location. But on my third night there, I noticed something impossible. A door in my hallway that hadn't been there before. It was old, wooden, its handle rusted with age. I touched it, cold as ice. I knocked. Something knocked back. I told myself it was my imagination. But the next day the door was closer. A few inches nearer to my bedroom. Every time I blink, it moves. Tonight I heard the handle turn. And I know whatever is behind that door, it wants to come through. Story 5. My dead sister just sent me a friend request. My sister died 10 years ago. A car accident. No warning. Just gone. So when I got a friend request from her last night, I froze. The profile picture was the same one she used before she died. Her last status update still there. But then a message popped up. "I need your help. Meet me where it happened." I don't believe in ghosts. But when I drove to the accident site, someone was standing in the shadows. And she had my sister's eyes. Was a man who looked exactly like me. "What year is it?" he asked. And that was when I realized, the room wasn't locked to keep people out. It was locked to keep him in. Story 7, The Photograph That Changed. I found an old photograph of my parents, taken before I was born. They stood in front of our family home, smiling at the camera. But when I looked at it again the next day, something was different. A figure in the window behind them. A figure wearing my clothes. Story 8, My neighbor hasn't left his house in 15 years. Mr. Thompson has lived next door since I was a kid. But in 15 years, I've never seen him leave his house. No grocery trips. No visitors. Nothing. Last night I saw a light in his window. And a hand pressed against the glass. But this morning his house was empty. No furniture. No signs of life. Nothing to suggest he had ever lived there at all. So whose hand did I see? Story 9, The Girl Who Vanished in the Elevator. My office building has an old, rickety elevator. One night I shared the ride with a young woman. She pressed the button for the 7th floor. When the doors opened, she was gone. I never saw her leave. She simply vanished. Security footage showed me entering the elevator alone. But I remember her. I remember her smile. Story 10, The Doll That Moves on Its Own. My daughter found an old porcelain doll at a thrift shop. "She's lonely," my daughter said. The first night I heard footsteps in the hallway. The second night the doll was sitting outside my bedroom door. The third night it whispered my name. Story 11, The Basement Light. My husband and I bought a fixer-upper house. Every night the basement light turns on by itself. I changed the bulb. Rewired the circuit. Even nailed the door shut. But at exactly 2:14 a.m., the light flickers back on. And last night I heard footsteps coming up the basement stairs. The door is still nailed shut. So who or what is trying to come up? Secrets. Betrayals. Shadows that watch. Each story carries its own question, its own terror, its own suspense. Which one will keep you up tonight? Fear isn't just about monsters or ghosts. It's about the unknown, the unexplainable, and the terrifying realization that some things are beyond our control. Each of these stories carries an important lesson. Not everything is as it seems, and some mysteries should remain unsolved. If you enjoyed these chilling tales, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more suspenseful and thrilling content. Let me know which story creeped you out the most in the comments.